Good morning or afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome back. This is the Caring Community segment on inclusive social emotional learning. And so, if you've been following along with our Belonging Basic video series, you know I'm Sally and I'm here with my colleague and friend Jackie Joseph. And if you need to know more about us, you can watch the introduction video. We go a little bit into our backgrounds, our experiences. You can learn about our funder, Rocky Mountain Human Services. And we're appreciative to them for this opportunity. And just as a general reminder, again, we are running through this video series for the purpose of supporting inclusion and belonging. And so that's the lens we're taking. And we want to talk about something really important to all of us, which is social emotional learning. And today we're going to be thinking about it really specifically from that lens of inclusion and belonging. So here we go. First things first, if you are in early childhood or elementary education, you know that social emotional learning is important. It has been a hot topic in our field for decades, in fact, that really children do learn through the context of their relationships and all of those social experiences, having those emotional skills like co-regulation, ultimately self-regulation, problem solving, understanding how to make friends, how to work through a social conflict, all very important. And when children have those healthy social emotional learning experiences, that also leads us to healthy mental health, which again, as that marriage and family therapy lens, I'm always looking for. What is the most supportive way that we can bring children into healthy social emotional development? Yeah, Jackie, go ahead.
I was just going to say, as you were talking, Sal, it made me think about this is one area of development that it happens whether we're supporting it and facilitating it or not, right? And that's why
Yeah.
social and emotional learning is important. Like biologically, we have emotions. Biologically, we're
Mm.
social and connected, and we figure out how to be with people, be in community with people. And so it's really happening whether we're supporting it or whether it's happening
Right.
biologically. And so a really important purpose of SEL in early childhood is if we're not fostering it, we're not supporting kids to develop self-confidence and using social and emotional skills in ways that work with them, we know that they're going to have a harder time developing eventually self-regulation skills as they get older in our teens and young adults. And it's just incredibly important. And especially, we also know that young children are going to have behaviors that are going to feel tricky and hard to understand and hard to support as adults. And social and emotional learning is how we, again, do it together with kids and their families, because those things are happening in our bodies and in the world around us anyway. So this is really how we support kids to learn and grow in a way where they're not always having hard times all the time either.
I love that you brought that up. I think that's so important for us to give the intentionality that this deserves, because our brains are laying down those neural pathways immediately. And that's part of the importance of early childhood and why we focus on that 0 to 8, is because that's when so much of this development is happening. And you said it really well, Jackie, that it's happening whether we're paying attention to it or not. So either children are learning things like mistrust, or they're learning things like, I have to do it on my own, or they're learning things like grown-ups help me or grown-ups don't help me. There's all kinds of things that are unintentionally being sent through the universe. And this is our opportunity to be really intentional and build those neural pathways and those experiences with positive social emotional development in mind. And that will lead us to the things that you are seeing on the screen. If you're watching this, if you're listening, I'll read them out for you. This is how we develop identity and self-confidence. This is how children build those secure, meaningful relationships that are grounded in trust and co-regulation and support, strengthening empathy, community, and problem solving. We're all living in a world right now that's complex and challenging at all levels. And so additional empathy and community and problem solving is something we can aim for. Recognizing and expressing emotions, regulating emotions in the ways that work for everyone. We're going to talk a lot about what are the different ways that this plays out from an inclusion and belonging standpoint. Exploring and playing happens when we have those trusting relationships. We feel more secure. And then lastly, having those positive experiences does lead us to experience that psychological safety that we're aiming for, and the connection and belonging that we know is so important to learning. So, if those are all pieces of why social emotional learning is important, and you all, watching this, listening to this, have your own reasons and the things that you know to be true, what do we mean specifically by inclusive social emotional learning? As we've been saying throughout this series, our aim is really around inclusion and belonging for every child, including those children with disabilities. So, what do we mean by that? Well, let's give something a try. Let's start with an idea that we call say cheese. Think just for yourself, what makes you smile? What's a variety of reasons that you might smile? And what feelings might a smile be showing? Jackie, do you want to share yours?
I do. As I was, well, no, I was thinking, wow, I need to brush up on my emotional literacy. I need to read some more Atlas of the Heart, Brene Brown or something when you said what feelings. But I think for me, obviously, when I'm feeling love or joy, those deep feelings where my kids are making me feel proud, or I'm just connecting with them in a way that I can see the sparkle in their eyes when they feel safe. Or when they
Yeah.
take that big deep breath and they know, okay, my mom's going to help me co regulate in this really hard moment for me right now. That makes me smile. And then when I'm happy and laughing about myself or laughing with other people, because I just love joking. And I think that finding the joy, even as we do this really important hard work, is really important for me. So that makes me smile. And also when I see my colleagues, we always say this, just working in their strengths and doing what they love. I love to watch people crushing it and doing what they love. That's one of my most favorite things too. That makes me smile as well.
Yeah, I love all those. I mean, for sure, those are universal. I think there's been all kinds of studies done that universally around the world, people smile for all of the reasons you just said. When we do this activity or conversation in our different training events live with people, we also get answers like if I'm feeling awkward in a situation, I might have an awkward smile, like, yeah, sure, I'd love to come to your activity. That sounds great. I don't want to go at all. I'll think of a reason to get out of it later. We might smile to placate someone. Maybe someone in a power position has said something that we don't agree with, but we don't have the psychological safety to show that. And so we might just nod and smile along, kind of a get through it situation. There's probably other reasons that people smile. We've definitely heard in situations where, people are at a funeral, a very somber event, and they're smiling or laughing because that's how their body is processing their grief. Maybe they thought of a funny story and they don't have the ability to tamp that down. And so there's all kinds of reasons that people smile and all kinds of feelings that a smile might show. And we talk about this for inclusive social emotional learning because when we're in environments with children with disabilities, children who are autistic or intellectually disabled, children who have Down syndrome, children who are non-speaking, we need to be particularly tuned into their cues and understanding what those nonverbal communications, those gestures, those eye gazes really mean. And they might not mean what we think they mean. It might be an unexpected laugh at a funeral or a smile to placate your boss that doesn't indicate authentic joy that Jackie was just talking about.
And on the flip side, Sally, it made me think too, just because I smile when I'm feeling a certain way, someone else might feel that way and not smile or
Yes.
express that same, like we all smile for different reasons and then we all express
Mhm.
emotions in different ways too. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah, like if
was
I'm having deep joy, I might just be internalizing it. I might have my eyes closed. I might not be externally representing that. And those feelings are still my feelings and they're still okay. We're going to talk later and often about all ways of expressing those emotions are okay as long as they're within our community agreements of being safe, being kind, right? And so that's some of the balance that we're going to continue to talk about.
And I
So
think
let's,
that's so,
no, go
sorry.
ahead.
I was going to say one more thing that does come
Please.
up too. I should have put these in the notes, Sal. I'm just interjecting. This makes me think a lot about, I won't dive too deeply here, but I promise we'll write a Substack post about it or something
Yeah.
challenging to connected. That oftentimes when we think about belonging, we also have to pay attention to those cues that you were talking about. And sometimes those very minor, or if we're not looking for them, unnoticeable cues that this makes me think about the concept of masking or fitting in, which is the
Mm,
opposite of belonging. And just
mhm,
because perhaps I'm not crying or I'm not expressing sadness or loneliness in a way that you expect doesn't
uh-huh,
mean that I'm not feeling it. And also, I could have learned in this space or any other space
mhm,
that that feeling's not okay. That feeling's not safe. And so I'm going to
mhm.
pretend like I'm not feeling it. And especially
Yeah.
for kids, that can become a situation where we're just missing so many opportunities to make them feel safe, help them feel belonging, and then help them become the best versions of themselves. And so you'll probably find a way to sum up my idea way better than I have just said
Oh,
it.
I'm
But
so ready for it.
I was like, I already feel you doing it.
Here I come.
Yeah.
I actually am so glad you said that because the idea of masking or fitting in does separate us. It creates loneliness and it's painful. And so, even my quick example of perhaps I'm in a meeting with someone who I don't have the emotional safety, the psychological safety to express how I feel, so I nod and smile along. That's also masking and fitting in, but I'm an adult and I have other ways I can write a note about how I really feel. I might even be texting a colleague. But, anyways, if I'm a child and I'm masking and I'm trying to fit in, my neural pathways are being tracked down in weird ways that aren't authentic to who I am. I'm experiencing loneliness and pain, and that's going to come out somewhere. That is going to come out in disengagement, perhaps, in behavior that seems challenging, perhaps. And I held it together at school all day, and then I'm going to fall apart and melt down and scream at my family all night where I do feel safe. And so there is a consequence to letting those masking, fitting in things happen over and over and over again. It's not benign. It does come out somewhere. And so it's opportunity for us to really pay attention and cue in.
And I think and then we can move on from this slide, but I think that's the whole point of why we started from challenging to connected
Yeah,
is the missed opportunity when we don't focus on safety and connection and belonging. And then
that's right.
children might use behaviors because we have a tendency to put the responsibility to change or to learn something on the child. But we really want to think about the environment and what we can do in community and as adults to help the child experience safety, connection, and belonging. And then oftentimes the behaviors aren't happening anymore because they feel those things. And when those developmentally expected behaviors happen in early childhood, because that's how young children are learning and growing, they're oftentimes not as tricky or challenging to understand and support because we have the foundation of connection and belonging first. And so I
Mhm.
really do appreciate your comments there.
Okay, well, let's try another one. This was a little bit of an emotional slide. Let's try a social skill. Let's imagine that you are in your favorite coffee shop, or maybe you like ice cream or a bookstore, or whatever place you love, and you see a friend on the other side of the room. You haven't seen them or spoken with them or messaged or texted or snapped them for months. And inside, you feel really excited to see them. What might you do next? How might you get their attention? Or what might you do in that situation? Jackie, what would you do?
Oh, you threw me off when you said you're really excited to see them, but
You
that's
are,
fine.
you're excited to see them.
Even if I'm excited to see them, there is a small chance
Mhm.
that I'm going to, and I embrace my awkwardness. So I'm not saying this as though it's a bad thing, right? That I might be a little bit socially awkward. I might be too excited to see them. And then tell them some story that they don't need to know because I'm so excited that I can't form my thoughts. And then I tell them about how my dog rolled around in the dirt this morning when I haven't seen them in a long time. And that's not what I maybe could be saying the first time I see them. Or if I'm with my kids and I want to be able to give them full focus, but I also want to be able to give my kids full focus, I might, hey, as I'm like leaving or
Uh-huh.
something, because just depending on the situation, I might react
Yeah.
in lots of different ways.
Yeah, that comes up all the time. So Jackie knows this is true about me. If if this is me in the coffee shop and I see someone I haven't seen for months, I am going to squeal in joy and run over and hug them. I'm just going to. I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, and run over and give them a big hug, whether they wanted one or not. And then be like, I missed you. How are you? I can't believe I haven't talked to you for so long. And if you're my friend, you know that about me, and you might not like it. And we're going to talk about in a little bit what we do in those situations when we have that happen on the playground. But that's who I am, and that's what I'm going to do. When we do this in training with live participants, and maybe those of you listening at home or watching at home have a different list of things as well, I've heard all kinds of things. Like in this situation, if we drill down to how might you get that friend's attention, there's everything from I'm going to squeal, make a scene, run over, hug you slash tackle you, all the way to I'm gonna high wave over here and see if you come and approach me. I've heard people say I might text them in the moment and be like, hey, I think we're at the same coffee shop, and then see if that gets a response. I've had people say they would calmly walk over and tap their friend on the shoulder and be like, hey, oh my gosh, it is you. I haven't seen you. So there's this giant range of ways that as adults, we would choose to get our friends' attention. And the reason we think about this is that it really applies to what happens in our preschool settings and how we are teaching children the social emotional skills. So a social skill that we might teach children is how to get your friend's attention. And we'll talk about what are these different things that we want to consider. When we think about this idea of getting someone's attention, that puts us into this friendship space of how do we build friendship through mutual enjoyment and shared experiences. And in my earlier role as a behavior consultant, you would see some kind of situation where there's children building a tower. They've got their blocks and they're stacking them and they're getting really high. And then a child who hasn't been playing notices and she comes running over, probably excited to play, but doesn't know how to get her friend's attention. And her giant hug is to just knock the tower over because that's how she loves to play with blocks. And we might need to teach her how to get her friend's attention and join that play. And again, thinking about what are the range of ways we're going to do that. When she's so excited, what is that going to look like? And we can keep unpacking those options through the rest of this video. Jackie, is there anything you want to share?
Yeah, I'm committing to writing a Substack post of some really great resources about each of the 10 of these. And as soon as that's up, we'll post it in the notes on the video for you. So check that out. And the one that I think really stands out for me, and based off of what we've been talking about, connection over compliance, is self-advocacy. Self-advocacy really comes through in the neurodivergent affirming literature. And from individuals who are neurodivergent, who are writing about, communicating about what's really important to them when it comes to social skills or socialization. Because the neurodivergent affirming literature really helps us think about all of the different ways and why is this important? Why does this matter? So children, especially who might do things in different ways, aren't internalizing these messages as though their way is wrong or their way of socializing is wrong. And that's where some of the strategies that we're going to talk about in a few moments are going to be really important. But all of that to say, self-advocacy is a really important one for me as well. And here's a little story. In Juniper's IEP meeting last year, as I was reviewing the IEP, I read a comment that a provider had written that said she perseverates or tends to focus or say it a lot on the word no. And I asked during the meeting if they could tell me more about that and what their observations were. And when they started telling me about what they were seeing, I said, I actually personally would prefer that we remove the word perseverate or fixation from being associated with the word no in her IEP and maybe in our minds, in our lenses, because Juniper being able to say no is such an important self-advocacy skill. We can build on it. We can grow on it. We can give her, when she says no, she gets a page on her communication device where she can tell us more information. But no is a cue for us. No means June saying, this doesn't work for me. Something feels off. I need something different right now. Maybe I need a different choice. And so I don't want to think of no as a challenging behavior that we have to reduce. I want to think of no as something we can, as a strength that we can build on, and as a cue for us that now we understand that we can offer some type of other support or choice here. And so I think
Yeah,
that's
because
why
June might be,
advocacy is so important to me. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, June might be saying no because it doesn't feel right in her body right now, or she might be saying no because of so many reasons that we don't know and we need to understand rather than
Hmm.
just forcing compliance. And I think that's what
Exactly.
you're saying.
Yeah, and oftentimes because we tend to put social and emotional learning goals in children's IEPs, we actually have greater expectations for how much a child with a disability should comply or should not
Mhm.
say no or should say yes. Our expectations are often more actually for kids with disabilities than they are for kids without disabilities. And so we really have to think about also what is developmentally expected, developmentally appropriate. Are we looking at it as a self advocacy strength, learning from it, responding to it in a way that's connection focused, and also remembering that they're humans and we need to presume competence and expect just as much of kids with disabilities as we do for non disabled kids, but also not more than we expect from other kids to the point where we're expecting something that's not that any 3-year old cannot do, right?
Totally. Because if in that exact situation, if Goldie says no thanks because I'm tired and I want to go to calm down corner and rest, that's probably going to be okay. Whereas if Juniper just says no, there might be this idea that she's perseverating on no. But what if she's wanting to say, no thanks, I'm tired, I want to go to calm down corner? But her
Exactly.
way of saying that is just no. Both of
Mhm.
those need to be supported in ways that are kind, right? And that honor who they are as people.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other one I wanted to just build out real quickly before we move on is this connection idea. And I think it goes back to the example of hello, friend in the coffee shop. So, in a classroom that I was working alongside of a coach, there was a wonderful, amazing child. I'm going to call her Ellie. That's not her real name. And Ellie had a variety of disabilities, had the most beautiful, energetic personality, and was so joyful and wanted to play with her peers and wanted to do the bubbles and sing songs and play on the swings. And her way of approaching peers was to get very close, like right up in their face, and then also a lot of hand on their body situation. And for some of the children in the class, their first reaction was a recoil because it was unexpected for them to have her right up in their face and hands all over. And so when we think about connection and about social emotional learning, part of this is yes, we're going to teach Ellie that getting right up in someone's face and touching all over them isn't everyone's preferred way to have you get their attention. And also, we taught the children in the class, hey, guess what? Ellie's eyes don't work the way yours do. And so she has to get really close in order to see you. And because her eyes don't work the way yours do, she uses her hands in order to make sense of the world. So, in the way that your eyes tell you about somebody, her hands tell her about somebody. And so we could find a way that when she came in close, because she needed to, and put her hands on her friends, they could take her hand, give themselves some space, and then talk about it with her in a way that worked for both kids and supported how she learns, how the other children learn. And we've got some examples coming up of how you can create those kind of social stories within your community once you know the children that you have in your classroom. And so, why is this so important? I think we've been embedding this throughout this conversation, but just to make sure that we have it summarized on one slide for you, planning for many ways is important because children and adults use skills and do things in many different ways. We've been talking about the many different ways that we do things. And planning ahead helps us notice and value all of them. It also opens multiple entry points for play, relationships, and learning. And so, to Jackie's point earlier, rather than seeing a child's behavior as challenging and a thing we have to solve, we can open up more doorways for them to enter play, to enter an activity, to enter a routine, and then we reduce that challenge before it even starts. We can also think about this in terms of that reducing barriers to participation. So if there's lots of ways to play, to get someone's attention, to express my emotions, then I can participate because I don't have to fit one way of doing it. And that's what belonging is about is I get to be me. I don't have to fit in to belong. My way is a real way. Is there anything you want to say about My Way's a Real Way, Jackie? I know that quote means a lot to you.
No, I was literally thinking, oh, that was so beautiful. No notes. No
No
notes.
notes, no notes. So, a few things that we can do in terms of planning for many ways. This is the part where how do we bring this idea into our teaching practice? Three things that we like to do. There's certainly more things you might already be brainstorming. One, just observe how our children are already doing it. So, in my example, Ellie's already running up, showing she wants to play with kids by getting really close to them, putting her hands on them. And then let's figure out how together we can honor her way, but also help her learn what other children need in that situation.
This makes me think of something too, Sally. Your program might have a social and emotional curriculum, the
Mm,
pyramid model. The point here is there's a likelihood that your focus, the social emotional learning, might be on emotional literacy this week, or on identifying emotions, or on problem solving skills, or on calm down strategies. Any one of those you might be focusing on. So, with that in mind, in terms of this social and emotional competency, this is a great place to start. How are children already doing this to then
mm,
build on and help them use it even more? Know when to use it, know when a different strategy might be better based off of how they're feeling. And so, just to anchor that in a
I
little
love
bit
that.
about and why we haven't started there, because we just don't have 7 days with you to go over all of the parts of social and emotional competence and learning, but we'll offer tons of resources.
Yeah, I think that's great. And a good reminder that the intention of this video series is to help build on what you're already doing to ensure inclusion and belonging. And so, whatever it is you're already doing with social emotional learning, keep doing.
Mhm.
And here are some things that you can quarter turn your perspective. If you have a social emotional curriculum that says we teach children to calm down by smell the flowers and blow out the candles, just think about, does that work for all the children in your class? Are there any children for whom you might need a different strategy? And then how can you build in a range of options? That's sort of what we would love for you to consider.
Yes.
Some other things we can do, obviously, partnering with families. We're going to show you in just a minute a link to a video that has some really great family perspective involved. And then think about just asking children themselves, just like we did for building our caring community agreements. We can ask children. And in the situation I shared around Ellie, we asked the children that she wanted to play with, hey, guess what? Ellie wants to play with you. And she's really fun, right? And they're all like, yes, she's so fun. She just gets too close too fast. Okay, well, what do you think we can do then so that you and Ellie can play together? And the idea of taking her hand and holding it at the space that felt comfortable came from one of the kids in the classroom because they wanted to play with Ellie too. And asking them, how can we do this together, is just such an awesome way to honor and presume competence and build community, build empathy, all of the things.
I mean, were you just reading my mind? Did I send that thought? It connects back to something really important that you said in community agreements. We're doing it together, we're creating it together, and they're learning how to presume competence that Ellie can learn. And I
Mhm.
can let her know what works for me and what doesn't work for me. And it's helping her then respond to her friends in her environment. But really, it's anchoring back in those community agreements. This is how we show care with one another.
Yeah, and not to belabor the point, but it just works so much better for Ellie's belonging and the children's belonging that they decided with the support of an adult how to be friends, how to play together, rather than a very teacher directed, compliance driven response, which would be something like, tell Ellie stop, that's too close. So then all the burden of change is on Ellie instead of co-creating belonging together, which I think we've talked about a lot. I just wanted to say in summary of all of those things that that's really what we're after, is that co-creating of how do we do this together. Thinking about that planning for many ways, this is actually a great video. It's linked in your activity guide, and we would encourage you to take a look. It's only 3 minutes long. It is from a family perspective, and this family member talks through how they in their family have planned for many ways because all of her children learn differently. As if you are a parent or an aunt or uncle or grandparent, you know you can have children in the same house that learn differently. And Jackie's shared with us what that looks like in her house. The other thing that we think is really great is this set of examples from neuroclastic.com. I'm going to just share my perspective. I'll let Jackie give you a couple of notes as well. But as we were talking about all of those things, observe how children already do it, ask families, ask children, this is like, and this is what could happen from it.
Mm.
You can create these little mini social stories almost. This is how we're going to be together in this social skill or this emotional learning based on the actual children in our classroom. And so I love the one on the bottom left that says, Nadia learns best when she takes notes. Kyle needs to bounce and move when he learns. Fala learns from what she hears. These are really simple strategies to help children think about the range of learning for social emotional skills in your classroom. And again, have that community.
I love the idea of using these as one big story or as little chunks of it,
Mhm.
depending on how old your kids are, too. The person who created these, and they're available for free on the website, created them because they noticed that some of the other social stories or supports that were available, like you said, Sally, felt like they were created by adults for children
Mhm.
without celebrating all of the ways that we're same and different, and all of the different things we need to feel okay in our bodies to be able to learn. And so that's just what I would point out here
Mhm.
is meeting kids where they are with what you're creating. And oftentimes there are things that are available that will help us grow that lens of being really affirming of lots of different ways too, if we need them.
That takes us to the last little bit of our social emotional learning section. And actually, this is the end of the caring community segment. There is an activity guide, again, walks you through all of the things we've been talking about, offers you some space to plan with your team. If that's supportive, go ahead and take a look at it. And then lastly, we just want to remind you that all of these things are in the context and in the goal of co creating belonging. And so when we think about that inclusive social emotional learning piece, it is so that at the end of all of our time together, children and families, and all of you as the professionals working with children are experiencing these 10 dimensions of belonging with one another and continuing to strive for those experiences together. And that takes care of this segment. As Jackie mentioned, we'd love it if you would stay connected with us. Join us at challengingtoconnected.com. We're going to be posting some things on our Substack, and we'd love to see you there. The end.
The end.